Hi.
Hello. Oh,
Well, I don't know
well,
what happened.
yeah. I'm sorry about that. I was gonna open it up and then throw it over to you. Uh, but Nakasuchi, if you're listening, please go on YouTube and make sure there's not two streams up right now because I think we both hit the go live button. Um, so, welcome to the third episode of the Women of Atheism Roundtable, a monthly feature here on the Rage. And this time we're joined by all ex-Muslim women. And Faye is going to be handling things when I depart, because you might be asking yourself, hey, John, this is the Women's Roundtable. What are you doing here? Well, I'm just in here to start to say hello to everybody and tell you a few things about the channel. And then I'm going to go backstage and I'll be back at the end. And so if you have any questions in the live chat for any of these ladies, tag John Peterson, tag me in the live chat, and then I'll be back at the end of the stream and we'll ask all your questions.
I do think you figured something out, John. I think the original thing that we were planning with this series is to educate you.
Well, no, that was that. Yeah, that's another feature I used to do on my channels called John Learns New Shit, and that was what I did the first the Women of Atheism Roundtable as is an educational opportunity for myself. But then I realized it went so well that first time that we should make it a monthly feature on its own merit. Be looking for John Learns New Shit sometime in the future because I'm always looking to become smarter than I am. Real quick, I just want to let you know the Apostate Alliance. Me and Faye do that every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. This coming Sunday, we're going to be talking to Cheyenne Ali. August 27th, we're going to be talking to John Varghese of the CFIC. And on October 5th, or October 4th, we're going to have a little bit different of a stream. We're going to talk to the Rational Canadian Atheist, and he is somebody who never believed in God. He grew up in a household where there was no God belief. So that'll be a little different of an interview, but I'm looking forward to that. I want to get his take on a lot of different issues. We did this last night. Wednesday night is going to be open room night on the Rage here. Last night we did it at 6:00. That might fluctuate, depending on what's going on in Nakasuchi's life. And one of the things we want to do, or that Nak wants to do on that open room night, or as a separate stream on another night, is he wants to get as many women as he can into the stream to talk about the controversy behind the new movie that just came out on Netflix, Cuties. So be looking for that. If you're someone who wants to participate in that stream, shoot Nakasuchi a DM or shoot me a DM, or you can even shoot Faye a DM because I'm sure she'll take part in that. Let's see. Okay, and then as far as this show goes, next month, I want to let me bring Little Devil back in the room here. Yeah, that's not a problem. I'll keep an eye on that, LD, and if it happens during the stream, just come back in like you've been doing, and we'll insert you back into the group. But for next month's Women of Roundtable, Women of Atheism Roundtable, I want to try and have a panel of ex-Hindus. Now, I tweeted out appealing to the Twitterverse for Hindus to reach out to me, and that thread devolved into some other Twitter war that had nothing to do with my original tweet. So I will tweet out again about that. But if you are an ex-Hindu or you know an ex-Hindu woman, please have them DM me, DM Nakasuchi or something like that, because we want to try and put that's one. I've really talked to a lot of folks like that, the Hindus, but I have seen some of them interact with some of the ex-Muslims online, as far as the Hindus go, but not ex-Hindus. But I'm just interested. I'm interested in talking to ex-Hindus for this next month's episode, but I'm also interested in talking to Hindus just to learn more about that. So anyway, I'm going to get the hell out of here. I'm going to throw it over to Faye, and she's going to handle it from here. And I will be back at the end. Again, tag me in the chat if you have any questions for the group, and we'll read those questions at the end. All right, let me get out of here.
All right, this is now my house, and before we get started, I am going to do a little bit of venting. Little Devil is having a couple of issues with her internet, so she's going to be jumping in and out, and John is going to do his best to keep her in. We also have Eve, who we've interviewed previously on the Apostate Alliance, and we have Saff.com, who I believe we've interviewed you. We have interviewed you, right?
Yeah, and I was on last month's Women of Atheism Roundtable. So I basically live here.
Yeah, this is your house as well. But I just want to say this whole day has been a stressful day. I literally had to drag one of my students to a bathroom, and he's a wheelchair user, and all of the stuff that I usually need to like change somebody who sits in a wheelchair, which is not working. They had to get 3 other people involved. It became a whole thing. Like, today has been a stressful day, and I'm just going to sit here. We're going to embrace the chaos. People are going to be jumping in. People are going to be jumping out. There's going to be delays. There's going to be lags, but that's what this channel is here for. Okay, we're just gonna roll with it. Farah was also meant to be here. She sent her apologies. She could not make it work, but she's with us in spirit. I'm sure you'll watch this afterwards. And I hope we can get her on another time as well, because she has a really interesting story. She's from the UAE. She is like a techie person now. Like, there's a lot going on there. But anyway, before we dive into the conversation, I do just want to allow everyone to introduce themselves. So, Saff, who are you and what do you do?
I am Saff. At the moment, I'm not doing anything. I've just finished my master's, having to write my whole dissertation with no uni, which was been fun and stressful, but it's like good to get out of the way. And I got to write about sort of like exMuslim issues, which was really, really fun. I wrote about Rahaf Muhammad, so that was again like great to be able to do. Today I just had a nice day, enjoyed the last day of the sun before I'm having to work the next 4 days.
All right, let's throw it over to Little Devil. How are you? Oh, gone.
Oh, well.
I think that answers my question. Eve, if you would unmute yourself. How are you? What do you do? And who are you? You know, I mean, the audience may be marginally aware of who you are, but for those of us who might not know, who are you? What do you do? You are muted, so if you're unable to understand why no one can hear you, that is why. Hello? Okay.
Hi. Can everyone hear me or?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why my voice. But you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, all right then. I'm Eve, and should I say what I do first, or is there anything else?
Yeah. Yep. Just introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Wait. I'm Eve. I'm a nursing student. Don't really do much, I guess. I'm a student, so yeah.
All right. Okay. That was sweet. I didn't know what I was expecting. When Little Devil jumps back in, I will also ask for her to introduce herself and what she does. Oh, there you are. Little Devil, who are you? What do you do?
Quick.
Okay, before I disappear again. So I am an exMuslim. What do I do? I don't really do much. I'm still figuring myself out. I just left my family's home. I ran away a year ago, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. But right now I'm working. I want to go back to school and study sociology so I can become a social worker and help people like me who are also in a similar situation, escaping domestic violence and, you know, dealing with a lot of hardships on the way. Like along the way, I've been homeless, I've been through a lot of different things. So I kind of just want to give back and help people who are in that similar position. And one way of doing that is also about explaining my own experiences of what I had to go through because of the religion, what it actually put me through, and what, like, how it influenced my family, how it made them turn against me, and just everything that it had to do with that. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Great. I'm so glad you didn't get cut off halfway through that because you were telling like a really cool story. But I think the one thing that we all have in common is that not only are we ex-Muslim women, but we're all very recently ex-Muslim. Like Saff left like a year ago, almost exactly to the day.
Yeah, like 2 years in total, but like a year before like the world knew.
Yeah, and Eve was also quite recent, and Little Devil was also quite recent. So, and my experience has been almost 3 years now since I left Islam, but 2 years since I left, like everyone knew. So it's all very fresh, which might make for a very emotional conversation, but we'll play it by ear. So I think the first thing I want to cover is how do you guys feel currently about your position as being ex-Muslim? Because I'm currently going through the struggle of whether or not I even want to continue identifying as ex-Muslim, because I sort of trade labels as they fit my identity. If it's not something I'm always talking about, it's not really something that I sort of plaster on myself. It's not how I introduce myself. So how do you guys feel within the ex-Muslim label? What does it mean to you? Saff, you want to start first? We'll go like clockwise.
Yeah. At the moment, like it was like a really difficult period during lockdown, and especially like things on social media were getting really, really heightened. And I just didn't feel particularly comfortable like within the ex-Muslim community. It wasn't really the safe space that it used to be. So I don't have that label plastered anywhere, but when I'm talking about certain issues, I will refer to that as part of my identities. But like I talk about a lot of different things. I've always talked about politics and women's rights, regardless of say ex-Muslimness. But when I'm talking about ex-Muslim issues, I will refer to that. But yeah, I just don't feel like the community's been that great. Like we've had people that I felt like they can't be part of the community anymore. Like you had Nick who completely left. So it's not quite a welcoming place as it initially turned out to be. And that's like down to differences of opinions.
Little Devil, have you had a similar experience? Is your experience different? How do you feel you identify with the label, or how do you feel you don't identify with the label, if any?
I think I'm also kind of like still trying to figure out how I want to identify myself. Usually, whenever I do approach anyone, the first thing I do say is that I'm either atheist, agnostic, or just both agnostic, atheist. I don't usually go into detail about my former religion unless it really has to go that far. But as part of my own identity, I feel like it does make up a huge part of who I am. Like it is someone I was. Like when I was a Muslim, I was very, very like religious. I was, nearly 100%. I gave my all into being the perfect Muslim, at least as much as I could possibly be. So to not be one anymore, it's like a whole identity shift. It's like a whole, a whole 360. So for me, like it doesn't mean that just because I'm an ex-Muslim means like I'm completely opposite of who I used to be. I still have the same personality. I still feel like I'm still the same person at core, but there's a lot that has changed in me that I don't believe anymore. So like I used to be not anti-feminist, but I used to be the type of girl who used to just, allow misogynists to say or do whatever they wanted of me. I didn't have to like, fight for anything. And now for me, like feminism is such a huge thing. Like I realize my worth as a woman. I don't devalue myself. I realize now how when I was religious, I used to just Hello?
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there was or if there's if something's going on. Never mind.
Can
Eve
you hear me?
on us. Yeah, we can hear you. When she does jump back in, I will ask her the same question. But so when it comes to the exMuslim label, I kind of go between two things. It's this need to kind of shed it because I'm no longer a Muslim and it's not really something I'm going to focus on. And sometimes I do want to focus on it and talk about the bigger issues around it, because obviously there are bigger issues around it. You know, apostasy and stuff like that is still outlawed in many countries. And it's outlawed very, very severely, with death, with punishments, with abuse, with ostracism, all kinds of stuff, even exile. So there's that side of me that wants to sort of cling to the label and fight for a cause. And then there's the other side of it where it just feels like sometimes we're just the whiny, brown, emo children of the internet. I don't know if you can relate to that at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's why sort of like when I do like how LD says, I don't necessarily say I'm exMuslim. I'll say atheist. Now I identify as like I use my ethnicity, so I'm like a Pakistani atheist woman. That's how, when I'm talking about certain issues, I will talk in that frame. Yeah, because it just comes across, especially sometimes I could get talking about exMuslim issues, but sometimes people are just like, it comes under the genre of shit posting. Like it doesn't like the message doesn't seem like, the criticisms don't seem to be doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is just to trigger potential Muslim, like the Muslim extremists on Twitter for a response more than anything. Yeah.
Some of it is very clickbaity.
Yeah.
Eve, I want to give Eve a chance to speak just because she dropped out for a second. Eve, how do you feel about the exMuslim label? And do you ascribe to it? Do you find problems with it? What is your take? If you can hear us. And you can unmute yourself. And if there isn't a delay. We should have like elevator music for the times where there's
like the Wii music in the background.
All right, I'm trying to unmute you, Eve, but it says it won't let me unmute you because you muted yourself. So you need to unmute yourself before you can talk.
It could be that her microphone is disconnected or something. Little Devil, if you have a comment, you can, fill the space.
Yeah, I was gonna say that like I kind of get how some people don't want to like identify with that exMuslim label because of how certain people act as exMuslims. But for me, I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like everyone is kind of like at different phases of their apostasy, and for some people, the way they cope and the way they are like able to really process what they're feeling is, the first stage is usually anger. Like you feel angry that you've been lied to your whole life. You feel angry that your freedom has been taken away from you your whole life for over this something you thought was so sacred, but it actually isn't. So there's a lot of anger that that people experience in those stages. So I feel like the first stage is anger, and they try to like lash out on maybe other Muslims and stuff. Not that I agree with that, but it's just something they go through so they can process the emotions, and then eventually they can move forward and realize that maybe that's not what's really the best way to process things. So they move on, start having intellectual conversations, debates, dialogue, stuff like that. But I think for everyone, it's just a matter of like where they are in their apostasy and where they are like, with how they feel about themselves. So I think, for them, people like that, like they are just as much, valid exMuslims as anyone else. And I don't feel like I should feel ashamed of calling myself an exMuslim just because there are some people who act like that, because everyone started off somewhere, and they're not a definition of everybody. Not everyone is defined, because like, we're not like that, we're not like a collective group where one person action defines the actions of all of us. We realize that. But I feel like that's one of the reasons why a lot of ex-Muslims kind of feel ashamed of even like carrying this label anymore, is because they feel like their actions are defined by the actions of others. And I just don't think that's really the case,
I feel like myself and Saff have definitely experienced that there's sometimes the voices in this space become so overwhelmingly one opinion that you feel like you can't align with that group anymore. Like I definitely felt that at some point, especially here.
I think it's as well. It was difficult because I had ex-Muslim friends that were on Twitter, which were smaller accounts, just people I'd become friends with, just because we were ex-Muslim, but then we talked about other sort of things, and they were pulling me up on being like, why is this certain person acting this way? You know, why are the ex-Muslim community not talking about this issue? So like I felt like a personal responsibility to address it and to, on behalf of my friends who look up to figures and individuals like me and others in the community. It doesn't go well sometimes, but it was necessary to raise these issues and these other political issues that we should talk about. And if that meant, you know, not being part of the mainstream, I mean, I wasn't part of the mainstream to begin with, so.
I mean, I feel as though, because we're definitely referencing something very specific. We're talking about the BLM movement, which happened earlier this year and is still continuing as a movement. And I feel as though a lot of the ex-Muslim community, first of all, either didn't address it or they had taken a very conservative stance on the BLM movement. And Black Lives Matter and racial injustice in the United States and stuff like that. And I think that made not just sort of smaller ex-Muslims or younger ex-Muslims or even Black ex-Muslims feel uncomfortable, but also friends that we have made in the liberal Muslim sphere, because we've made quite a few friends who are liberal.
One of my closest friends on Twitter is a liberal Muslim, and she's always like stood by our side, always talked about ex-Muslim issues, like when we were facing a shit ton of abuse for just posting selfies, she and another girl were out there speaking on our behalf. And we're just friends in general. Like we talk about normal day things, ask each other how our days are and stuff like that. So like when they were pulling up things, like I have Black Muslim friends and they were like their individual family members had been physically affected by these protests. Like one of my friend's uncles was hurt, basically. So it's very real. Yeah, I felt as someone who was in that activist sphere to talk about it, I would have talked about it anyway, because that I've always been into American politics anyway.
Yeah, but I think that, so Little Devil, feel free to chime in as well. I think that sometimes it's really, really difficult to confront people with a massive following and people who have that massive platform where when they say something, they have, you know, all of these voices backing them up. And then it becomes like the majority opinion in the group that you align with. And then if you have a differing opinion, it becomes really, really difficult to express it. So it makes it, like, for example, for someone like me who had a dissenting opinion, it makes it really, really important for me to make a stand and say, hey, I don't agree with this. But as I feel like we've seen, it doesn't exactly turn for the best. So what is your take on that? Let's let Little Devil speak. I'm not sure what's happening with Eve, so I'm going to check in on her while you guys just discuss.
Well, my take on that, I feel like, you know, that's understandable. Like, you don't want when someone has a lot of power and they have a lot of influence over a certain movement and they speak on something that is, you know, contradicts your opinion, it's easy for people to see that and interpret it as meaning that this whole movement has this same opinion as this person who is, you know, followed by so many people, and that smaller voices like ours are typically ignored, and it's assumed that, you know, the whole movement stands for this particular opinion rather than the opinions of others. But I feel like in this sense, it still doesn't really relate to the ex-Muslim label itself. Sure, like both these individuals that have disagreeing, like, you know, opinions have the same label. They're both ex-Muslim, but it doesn't relate to being an ex-Muslim. So it's just a different, it's a different movement in itself. I feel like the ex-Muslim movement and like, different movements, like they can be connected, but like they can have different opinions on that. So it's not a reason really to be ashamed of having your own label and calling yourself ex-Muslim just because this person is a, white supremacist or a Hindu nationalist, and they support those people, and they, we know that those people are, anti-Muslim, and that's not what we stand for. But you will find some ex-Muslims who have these views, and you will have some ex-Muslims who don't, but that doesn't mean that every ex-Muslim is the same. And at the end of the day, we're not like a religion. We're ex-Muslim doesn't mean like there's no criteria to fall into to become an ex-Muslim. You don't have to like have the same opinions. You don't have to have the same beliefs. Like there's so many ex-Muslims who become Christians, who become Jews, who become Hindus. Like, you can become a different religion and still be an ex-Muslim, or you can just be an atheist and still be an ex-Muslim. Ex-Muslim is like a very broad term. All it means is that you used to be a Muslim, you're not anymore. It doesn't mean that you have to be an atheist. It doesn't mean you have to be a feminist. It doesn't mean you have to be, whatever. It just means you left Islam and you're not part of that religion anymore. So if it really just comes down to that, like I don't really think it's, a problem to call yourself an ex-Muslim just because it's all it is. It's just defining who you are, where you came from, who you used to be. It doesn't mean that, because you're an ex-Muslim and this person is also an ex-Muslim, that means you're also, on the same playing field as them. That doesn't mean anything. And if people interpret that, that's their problem. That's not, anyone else's issue. So for me, I feel like I would still call myself an ex-Muslim. I wouldn't, feel like I need to distance myself from this label just because of how other people act within this community. Because at the same time, like I said, we're not a Unitarian, community. We're not all following the same sex. We're not a religion, we're not like that. We're different. So we can have our differences. We can all be ex-Muslim and still have our differences. And we can have completely different like opinions that are completely like, at our like just completely different. But it doesn't mean that the ex-Muslim label is harmful. It doesn't mean anything like that. I feel like that. That's my opinion. But I understand why so many people wanted this. Like I felt a couple of days ago, I said something about how there was an atheist who supported something about necrophilia, and I found that disgusting and disturbing, and it made me feel uncomfortable with calling myself an atheist because I thought, well, if atheists are gonna go this far and say that, literally like not even think about morality and think that a human being is an inanimate object that's okay to do whatever you want with it. I don't want to have to be part of the same community as someone like that. But someone made me realize that, again, there's different types of atheists in the world. Not all atheists are going to have the same views. So there's nothing to feel ashamed of calling yourself an atheist just because there's other atheists who,
right.
might believe in that.
It's gone on for a little while. I'm going to try and get even. But I think the point that I was trying to make is that while I agree with everything that you're saying, we're definitely not monolithic because ex-Muslims come from all kinds of backgrounds and we end up in all kinds of different places because we are free thinkers, and that is the kind of lay of the land. What makes it difficult is when so many big figures are aligning with one position and then a lot of small, because I felt as though a lot of people started disassociating from the label because of it. And it was disappointing to see that rather than expressing their own opinion, people felt too either insecure or too afraid or too nervous to voice an opposing opinion, and just felt it was easier to just leave the community. And that's what sort of
because we had it even within our friends who were deactivating accounts or just changing accounts in general to not be associated with ex-Muslimness. That makes sense.
Yeah. If you are able to comment, please do feel free to unmute yourself and jump in whenever. There is a little bit of a delay on your end, so if I see that going, I'm just going to shut everyone up.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, Eve? No worries. Do you have anything to add on the label discussion?
I think you guys pretty much covered it. I don't think I have anything else to say. I do agree that as ex-Muslims we could, we have very different opinions, but I felt like what you said, especially, I remember what you said. I think I read your tweet after somebody made I don't know, I don't exactly know how to put it without, name dropping or something like that. But I remember you had a very, I think I saw your tweet first, and that was like, well, this is very obvious. Why should somebody even be saying this in the first place? And then I went back and I saw the other tweet, and I was like, well, this is a bit disturbing, but at the same time, as people, despite us having this one thing in common, we can have varying, opinions. But I felt like I was more, I sided more with what you said because I felt it was more obvious. Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
it
that's pretty much
definitely.
it.
I think what I disliked about it the most is that it became almost like warring sides, which it shouldn't have become. But I mean, it's human nature, and it's Twitter, which is just a
Yeah.
text-based movement, so it was inevitable. Uh, but I think we've covered
Yeah.
part of the ex-Muslim label. Now I want to move on to the woman label because we're all women here. Um, what is the environment like for you, as not just as a woman, but as a former Muslim woman? What I mean, I'm sure I can't see the other two ladies' faces, but I can see Saf's, and she's already annoyed. Um, so what does the lay of the land look like for women who have left Islam?
Yes, no, it's not great. Like
Um,
when I started tweeting about this
sorry.
stuff, it was like the abuse was personal. Like it got personal, and there was a lot of people questioning my mental stability. So I got called mentally ill so many times. But this wasn't even necessarily just related to being talking about exorcism stuff. It was talking in support of the LGBT community because a lot of my ex-Muslim and Muslim friends are identify as part of that community. Being a woman in general is scary. I mean, being an ex-Muslim woman, I remember my mom saying like when I first went a bit public, she was worried like people like Ali Dawah hopping on and like giving me abuse and stuff like that, and like being careful when I'm out and stuff like that because again, my face is out there and certain people will react quite negatively, and she was like more worried for my safety. But in general, being a woman living on her own is kind of terrifying. Just walking the streets, like when I used to work late, when I was walking home from the city centre, I would like carry my keys in my sort of like fists, and then again, like Dua Lipa, great, did a song about like that and talked about like how girls have to protect themselves a little bit more, but men can just be men. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about like personal safety, especially when like your face is out there. I do worry sometimes, which is why I don't necessarily say I'm ex-Muslim first. I will just say, I'm not religious, I don't believe in God. Then once I know like I can trust a person, then I'll be like, okay, yeah, I used to be Muslim. This is why I'm not religious anymore. But it's not something I usually say first, just to keep myself safe.
Yeah. So Saf, you may not be aware, but you are in a room full of former Salafis, so that might be some added problems. But little devil, do you have any kind of comment on what is your experience being an ex-Muslim woman? Let me just ask that.
You already know my experience, but for those who don't, it's hard. It's hard being a woman in general, like Saf said, but it's hard being an ex-Muslim woman, especially. Like, I mean, I've had even my face isn't even out there, even though like my name isn't out there. Like I've tried so hard to keep my identity private and anonymous. I've still had, people try to harass me, and people try to, send me threats, and people who try to like, find my location and do all this stuff just to God knows what, like, send me harm in some way. So it's always scary. Like I've already been put in a position where I've been vulnerable like that. So it's always terrifying to think like there's people out there who want to harm me like that, who would go out of the way just to do that. Like I've had people online where, they've doxed ex-Muslims in Muslim countries trying to hurt them. Like the extent some people will actually go to send people like us harm is just unbelievable, and it's terrifying. So like like Saf said, we always have to protect ourselves, and that's just the kind of society we have to live in, which is unfortunate. Like, it shouldn't be that way, but we just have to. And the same way, like, I don't usually come out and say I'm an ex-Muslim first. I usually do say that either, like, I'm not religious anymore, or I'm just, not practicing. First, I say that because I don't want anyone to even know that I'm atheist yet until I know I can trust them. Because for some people, even atheism is like, they think that's demonic, they think that's horrible. So I just tell them, I'm not religious. And then once I can trust them there, then I might say I'm atheist, then I might say I'm ex-Muslim, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the most open about me being an ex-Muslim, like when I first meet somebody. I am open if they ask me, but there was one time where one of my coworkers was like, "So wait, you don't believe in Jesus?" And I said, "No." And she just looked at me with the biggest, like, shock on her face. And I was like, most of the world doesn't believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
Anyways, Eve, if you have something to add. Eve, unlike us, she still lives with her family. So what, that is an added layer.
Yeah.
So what is it like being an ex-Muslim woman for you, Eve?
Honestly, it's really hard because I don't even really talk about being an ex-Muslim at all. I have, yeah, but I try to. I mean, it's hard to kind of like it's kind of hard to ignore, the things that made me an ex-Muslim right now, and it's the kind of things I press on at home because I have a lot of siblings who are, girls, and it's not exactly easy sometimes. It just seems like it's like watering a dead plant, but I keep on because I don't think I have anything else I can do about it. This this is something that I didn't ask for, but it just happened, and something that I'm aware of that I cannot just click off as I please. So, despite it being difficult, I don't think I would have had it any other way. I wouldn't have loved to live in ignorance. So yeah.
Yeah. Did any of you, like, growing up, always think that you wanted to be a boy just because boys had more freedom?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not really a thing that I have now, but when I was younger,
Yeah.
always wanted to be a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, given I probably had more freedoms than a lot of you did because my parents were pretty liberal, but I still wished again, I wish I was a boy because like, my male cousins wouldn't have had to say when they wanted to go somewhere with their friends and stuff like that. Because again, almost my friends when I was at school were Muslim girls. We all had to ask our parents 3 to 4 business days before we wanted to go out somewhere. Or like one of my friends, like her parents were a lot more stricter than mine, so we could only do like something once a week. We can do something twice a week because that'd be like, oh, you're seeing your friends too much, and that's like, again, it's just like seeing like male cousins, and they had brothers who had like way more freedom a lot earlier on. As a woman, you have to sort of, you gain that freedom quite a lot later, or you get it at marriage.
Does anyone want to add to that? A sort of added question that I wanted to ask is, has anyone ever, like, in your family or your parents, has anyone ever, like, used the words freedom or independence in, like, a really negative way? Like, you've got too much freedom, or
Yes.
you want to be.
I've been told that about me by other people, so yeah, this is why you send your daughters to university.
Yes, that's exactly what I used to hear all the time. Whenever I fight for like my education just to go to school, because my family wouldn't let me go to college or school. I was homeschooled all my life, well, up till 6th grade. From 6th grade onwards, I was homeschooled, and I couldn't go out. I couldn't even see my friends. Like, I didn't even have any friends, I think, at that point, because I lost connection with so many after being homeschooled and like stuck in the house. So like every time I bring up like, well, look at so and so, at least they go to college, and then I'd be told, well, yeah, too much freedom makes them, go astray, and it's haram, and there's fitna everywhere, and it's bad, and this is the end of times. We need to be more like, more religious, all this stuff. So like, I always had that, like, I also had people tell me that freedom equals like,
It's
yeah, the devil.
equals promiscuity, is what
Yeah.
Eve, do you have anything to add? Because you're currently in school. You're studying to become a nurse. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah. I think it will, for me, the word isn't freedom, but it's education.
Mm.
Like, they wouldn't say that it's yeah, the thing they'll talk negatively about is taking education seriously. And I think that that even happened during, I don't know if this is too heavy for me to bring on, but um when I went through my atheism and stuff like that, and I accidentally came out as an atheist, and yeah, I did get assaulted by my family. And I remember after that, they sat down. They were like, "Well, you shouldn't take everything you study in school very seriously." And I thought it was very, very funny at the time. And I think, yeah, that's the word for me. It was just education.
Especially when you're a nurse. I'd like to think you take everything seriously. Like, surely
Yeah.
they would want you to take that seriously. I can understand me doing pushy degree. They're like, oh, don't take that seriously. But you're doing nursing. I don't know why, like, it
Well,
gave
I
that
guess when she says don't take it too seriously, I guess, or I'm just guessing, and feel free to correct me. I think it's more so you're taking it more seriously than like getting married and having kids. Like
Oh,
your
yeah, I
prayer.
say that all the time. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I've started like pretty young. I've always used to say that I do not like children. And it's not like I don't like children. It's just that it's easier to tell people I don't like children than telling them I don't want to have them. Because they're like, oh, you must be a horrible mother, therefore we'll leave you alone. And yeah,
Mm.
rather than me telling them, like, you know how people glorify motherhood and just like in a very sickly way, if you ask me, it's not even that good. No, not the process, not the process. But I mean, like the way they're
Oh, no, it's
glorified is not
fine.
even
Me
good.
and Saff have an
And
understanding. The process is
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah, like my friend texted me the other day, and
yeah,
we got
I,
into it as like, how we both don't want children.
So one thing that I kind of wanted to, it's kind of
I
the
mean,
last.
personally, sorry.
Oh, go on. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was saying that I think the problem I always had with motherhood was how most of them are horrible parents, and they're the first people to tell you to have children. And
Oh
it was
yes.
kind of difficult for me. Yeah. And then I just used to tell them I don't like children because it's easier than they just, yeah.
Yeah. I just think as well, like the world we live in is such a it's just not it's not a safe world. We don't know how long it's gonna last and the way it's going. I am struggling to live in it. Like I would want to bring another human life in and make them struggle through just existing. 'Cause it's kind of hard.
Exactly.
So the sort of connecting topic that I was kind of going towards is work and marriage. I feel like those two things are constantly pitted against each other when you're a Muslim woman or living in a Muslim household as a woman. So what are your give me the tea? What is your marriage proposal conversation stories? Like what has happened in that regard? Let's start with Little Devil just because I don't feel like she had enough time to talk in the last sort of section. So yeah, tell us what's the story?
What's my marriage proposal story?
Yeah.
So like how my family would handle. Well, marriage is always on the table for me growing up. It's always been like my last, basically like like the completion of my womanhood would have been just getting married and having kids. Like that's kind of like what it meant to be a woman in our society and our culture, where it wasn't about, oh, what are you gonna do when you get older? Are you gonna go to college? Anything like that. Those type of discussions never happened. I never was told like, what do I want to be when I grow up? Like, what do I want to do with my life? It was always just one day you'll get married, you'll have kids, and you'll have a family of your own, and that's just how the cycle keep on going. And there's nothing wrong with getting married and having kids. That's not my issue. The only issue is when that's your only option left in life, when you don't have any other options but that I have a problem with. So for me, like, it's always been a thing that's always been constantly coming up. Like, since I was 14, my first marriage proposal came. I've had been told that I've had arrangements with my cousins when I was younger that they've been made since I was like a baby that I didn't even know of. And just like constantly, like I've always been having like marriage proposals come and go, and like every time I'd reject it, or if I put up a fight and say no, like I was always assaulted, abused, and like made to feel like I made the wrong decision. And because I lived in America, I was lucky that nobody could really physically force me because I can call the police and all that. But every time I did reject a proposal, I was still still abused for it. I didn't have like much freedom anyways. Even when I did say no, I would still not be treated like a human being for it. I wouldn't be treated like I was a woman who had any rights. Like every time I reject like especially like a religious proposal, because that's kind of what my family wanted, especially my dad. He wanted someone very religious for me. So like, yeah, it's just always been like that. Hello?
Saff, do you have anything to tell?
So like in my family, like a lot of my cousins, the female cousins, got married quite late for like, I guess like Muslim standards. They were married like 27, 20, 26, 28. So like that pressure was never there. But there was, yeah. So, but like I think if like I hadn't come out of exMuslim, in the next year or two, I probably would be married, which is kind of scary to think about. Like I probably would have just gone with it as like that's nature's course to go.
It is fight against it is what I found.
Huh?
It is much easier, at least in the short term, to just comply as compared to actually fight it, because you're not just fighting like one person, you're fighting like a whole system.
Yeah.
And it's scary. It's really, really scary. Eve, do you have anything to add?
Sorry.
Go for
Anyway,
it.
on my end, I don't. Yeah, sorry. On my end, I don't think that I've never really had that kind of problem with my parents. They never really told me to, to get married or things like that. But I've always shown my disdain very loudly for marriages or arranged marriages or religious marriages or anything for that matter. So I can't say that. It's just
I do have a funny story though. We were at I think it was like my mom's cousin's wedding. And my mom comes over to me and goes, "This auntie kept asking, trying to meet you because she wanted to marry her son to you. But then she kept asking my mom where my sister was. My sister's 16, like, that's not happening." And my mom was like, "You're not getting married to them anyway. I'm not letting that happen." It's a weird story. Like this, we were just at a wedding and there's like aunties like trying to poach you.
Yeah. So another sorry, go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing was this whole obsession with marriage. Another thing is when one of the girls in the family like rebels, I feel like there's so much pressure in the family to like marry off the other girls faster because they're afraid that they might do the same thing. And this is like evident from what happened to my own like family, like my own sister. She was almost like she was getting forced to get married at one point when I first left, and she was so unhappy with it. And I heard about this afterwards. I didn't even know about it in the beginning, but she told me how she was being forced, and they were telling her like, if she don't get married, we're gonna kill ourselves, we're gonna kill like just all these threats and making her feel so vulnerable. And she still said no. Like I'm so proud of her for saying that. But like the fact that they abused her so much just because I left, and they were afraid that me leaving would influence her and make her do something like that. And they thought it was the best decision to just get her married right away so that she would be, protected, quote unquote. And then eventually she did get engaged again anyways. Like she did find somebody, but I'm hoping this time it's better for her because she seems happy. But like, yeah, just this type of stuff happens, like it's not even just that's one of the reasons why I was scared to like run away, is because what if my decision like impacts somebody else? And sadly that's kind of like what happens to a lot of girls too.
Yeah. So this is actually a good segue for the next topic that I wanted to cover, which is not a very fun topic. It's abuse. Now, abuse is a pretty broad term. It covers a lot of things. So there's definitely, and when we talk about domestic abuse, it's verbal, it's emotional, psychological, sexual, neglect, and also physical, of course. I wanted to ask if, and I mean, I know the answer to it, but I just want to put it to the panel. Was that, I mean, what abuse, was it not seen as just sort of normal? Like it was just seen as kind of like discipline? I mean, we can start, I don't know where to, well, I do know where to start. I think we should start with Saff and then gradually get worse. I feel like Saff probably, even though she had a bad I think even though you had a bad experience, I definitely think that Even and Little Devil may have had it worse.
Yeah, no, like there was no physical abuse from. I knew I was never gonna face that from my parents. There were not nice conversations, but it was nothing that we didn't eventually end up talking through it. And it's like, it was a lot. Again, they never expected me to be like this, so it was a natural sort of reaction. But yeah, there was no sort of immediate abuse, but I was worried at a point from how certain other family members would react, and if they found out like what they could do to me, because there has been like certain ones who have been violent towards other women in my family. So I was worried about that. And then when I only eventually vocalized that to my parents a couple of weeks ago, and my mum was like, as long as I'm alive, they're not getting near you and they're not going to hurt you. My mum got into like full mother hen protective mode. So I was like,
mother hen.
Yeah. But like, my parents never raised us like that. Like, we would never get hit as kids. We would get shouted at as kids do things wrong, and then we'd have like certain things taken away from us. Like, you wouldn't have your phone, or you wouldn't be able to do this, or you go to bed early, stuff like that. Like, my parents didn't want to raise us that way, and my mum's parents never raised her that way. So yeah, that was just not in my family. I think that's purely because, again, my parents are second generation, so they've sort of moved on from sort of like how corporal punishment was used.
Yeah. All right. Little Devil, what's your take?
Well, at first I want to just mention how, like, I know a lot of people are probably going to come and see this and say, that wasn't Islam, that was just your family. I just want to say, cut the bullshit. Like, don't say that, because a lot of what we had experienced was directly influenced by Islam, It's not like it just came out of nowhere. For me, my family were very strict, and for most of my life, I wasn't ever like beaten by them because I was so obedient. I was so subservient. Like, I always followed the rules. So for most of my life, I didn't have that abuse, unless it was only when I was, disobeying them in somehow. And I always tried not to do that. But when it came to the point of my apostasy, that's kind of where it all started. Like, that's the only point when I started disagreeing, started disobeying. I still wore the hijab, I still wore the niqab, because I didn't really know how I was going to just take that off 1 minute, because I was wearing that for so long. But at home, the least I stopped doing was, I stopped praying. That was the only thing I stopped doing, because I said, if I don't believe anymore, that's it. And I did this quietly. I didn't talk about my apostasy. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't say anything about, religion. I just stopped praying because I didn't believe anymore. And for this one act of deviance, this one, thing, my father, everyone knows this already, but I'm going to say, my father tried to kill me for that, and my life was put in danger for that, like, for that one act of deviance. So abuse, like, I wouldn't say I had abuse all my life, but I have always witnessed abuse. I've witnessed my mother getting abused by my dad all the time. And for me, as long as I stayed obedient, as long as I followed the rules, I didn't get beat. But when it came to my policy, that's when I started rebelling. Whenever I fought for my education, whenever I fought for those simple things like this that I was being denied of, I was abused. I was beaten. I was kicked. I was, whatever you want to call it. And it's just, these things are sanctioned by the religion to some extent, because at least apostasy is, because apostasy is punishable by death. So, when parents, or when people who are in charge of us, especially the women, they do this a lot with the women especially, they're doing this because they're trying to preserve their own akhirah. They're trying to preserve their daughter's akhirah. They're trying to, they think they're doing something right by abusing you. They think by beating religion into you, it's going to like save themselves from hellfire and save you. And they don't think of this as some kind of like, act of domestic violence. They don't consider this domestic violence. And if anything, like, I remember when my mother was beaten so bad, like, my dad nearly killed her, and I called an ambulance for her, and everyone thought I called the police, and they made me feel like I was, the traitor or whatever. And when we called our uncle over to tell him, because my dad only listens to his family, so we told our uncle, tell him something. He said, there's nothing wrong with this. That's his right. He can do whatever he wants to his wife. So, domestic violence basically justified in Islam right there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Women are just the property of men, and men can do whatever they want with their property. That's all it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Eve, you want to add to the conversation at all?
Okay. I guess yeah. So, well, okay. I think
It's a lot. Just take as long as you want.
it's really a lot. It's fine. Okay, so basically, abuse is it's something that I've also always witnessed when I was growing up and things like that. And it's kind of weird how we have something in common with, Little Devil, because that's the same thing. I used to be very obedient. I never used to like, you know, get punished or things like that for most of my childhood. I think the problem began when I was young, I didn't really used to talk much. So I think the problem began when I was in high school. That's when I started to, develop. I don't know, is it a spine or I don't know if it's just I just started knowing how to hold a conversation and things like that. And the more I talked, the more people realized how different my views were to them, especially family members. And that probably even didn't start then. I think it started after my apostasy, which was very recent. And I got attacked by family members and especially my mother, and it was really very hard for me. I think that's I've never really felt that scared before in my entire life, and I was really sure that day that I was going to die, but I didn't. Either she didn't try hard enough, or it just was not happening. But yeah. Anyway, I think one of there was something I had in the back of my mind when we were starting this, and I don't know why I forgot. Um, yeah, I think this was it for me. When people are doing something like that, or when they justify what they do to you, um, of course it's still wrong, but I still feel like it's still like in the back of your head. If you feel like you harming somebody else is you upholding something that you consider sacred to you, it's still wrong. So I never really understand the kind of logic that happens there. And yeah,
So
sorry,
while
I
we've
kind of
talked
blanked out.
about no, it's fine. It's fine. You did great. Um, while we do focus a lot on physical violence, I do think, like, because I work with children and especially with vulnerable children a lot, it's not just physical violence that has a lasting impression, especially on young people. The fear of being abandoned, the fear of violence, the fear of losing financial support from the people who are supposed to take care of you. This is all abuse. Like, if someone makes you feel like that, if someone is neglecting you, and they are your caretaker, they are meant to protect you, they're your family, it is a form of abuse because they are leveraging something against you in order to get something out of you. So I think that even though it may not be equally valid to physical violence, it has a lasting impression on people. So while I don't want to dive too much into Saff's story, there was that threat of like you losing financial support because you left Islam, and that's equally scary, especially when you are a woman, you're living by yourself, and suddenly that rug is pulled from under you. It's
Yeah,
something
like
really
it
big.
happened while I was in the middle of like my degree. So like I was still pretty young. Like it was different kind of living, and it forced me to grow up very quickly. But like luckily I had friends around who unfortunately had to do that when they were a lot younger. So there was like a level of support there. But it was difficult, and that sort of time period and then trying to get up, like going back home, going back to normality, I found it very hard to adjust. And it's even now I'm learning to get better, but it's difficult for me to feel constantly secure. That's why like I need to have a job. I need to like have my own. I need to have it for myself. And my parents support me and look after me all the time. Like they've helped me a lot the last few months and stuff like that. And my dad like messages me like every day saying like he loves me and he's proud of me and stuff like that, like having those like reinforcements. But because it happened at a time like, and I never really talked about it until quite recently. So because I didn't feel like I could, it was kind of one of those like, this happened, you left, and we don't really talk about it anymore. And then like there was a whole sort of thing, like my sister got off like chest some of her things. My dad was more open about like what was going on with him. And like since then, like we're like more open as a family about like our mental health, which is massive for Pakistanis in general, because nobody really talks about it. And like my dad will tell me what's going on with him, so that like makes me feel like I can talk about things more, because we are very similar people in terms of our personalities and how we express feelings and stuff like that. But yeah, I think people sort of underestimate the emotional side of things, because they take a long time to unlearn. And that's not necessarily just what happened with, but someone who deals with anxiety in general, it is very difficult, because it gives you another thing to be anxious about.
Little devil, do you actually? I may pass it over to Eve, because this was a point. This is what she forgot to say before. This is what had blanked. So if Eve wants to chime in, please do. Feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Sorry. I think one of the things I remember about when you said, was it emotional abuse or even being neglected physically or financially? I think I remember that, especially the first night I was at the hospital, and I remember I was fasting the whole day and I didn't eat anything, and I just really got assaulted so badly. And I was in the hospital and it was pretty critical, and nobody brought me food or anything. Nobody came to check on me. My parents pretty much cleared that if I didn't take back the words that I said, that I was on my own. And I'm still a student, so like I've never really felt that abandoned or alone in my entire life. And I really had to work things out or think things out. It was one of the hardest nights that I've ever had in my entire life. Like I couldn't sleep, I couldn't stay awake. Like everything was just really too painful to think about. So yeah, that's.
And little devil.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that as well. Financial abuse, like I wasn't allowed to work. I wasn't allowed to do anything to really support myself and be independent. So when I was even considering running away, I didn't know how I was going to support myself and how I was going to manage. And there weren't any resources. Like every resource that I called to help me said they wouldn't help me because they wouldn't consider my case domestic violence because it was parental abuse and not partner abuse. So I was really like, stuck in the mud. I didn't have any support. I really took a risk when I left. And the fear of abandonment, like that's always been something. I still have that fear too, because when I left my family, I felt like, that was it. They're never going to come back for me. They're never going to care about me again. And, when I left again, I've been trafficked. I've been through all that. So then I've been like, abandoned in a foreign place that I didn't even know where I was. And there was a lot of issues like that going on. Then I was homeless. And I just always felt like I've been alone. I didn't really have anybody. And just that fear, like not having financial security, not having anything on you to really keep you there, that's also a big risk. So, and then like when I was struggling like that, I did reach out to some of my family members to help me, and they turned their backs on me too. So at that point, I really felt like I was alone. I didn't have anybody. So it really is like that's one of the biggest leverage I think like parents, religious families, or anything like that can have on their kids, is just making them feel like 1 minute they're there for them and the next they're completely gone. And then you're on your own. You're stuck in this world that you've never even experienced before. You never even been stepped out of your house before, and you just see this world that you're just so new to. Like nothing makes sense. I don't even know how to take a bus. I don't know how to do any of this. I'm just asking myself how I'm going to survive. Like that's the biggest like thing. Like aside from the physical abuse, like you can get beat every single day, but how are you going to manage to take care of yourself if you even leave? So yeah, it's a huge risk and huge scary thing about abuse.
Yeah. So we've been in heavy sad territory for a while. Let's take a detour into something slightly more light and fluffy. I think that the things that have improved since I've left my family and left religion is my ability to connect with people. So in terms of like making friends, creating relationships at work, romantic relationships, those kinds of things. Have you guys found similar? What are the struggles in that? What are the benefits in that? how do you navigate that? So we'll take it from Saff and go clockwise.
Yeah, I think since leaving, like I've become much more confident as a person and expressing like my views, how I feel. Definitely that in the same way that you've talked about in all sorts of relationships in my life. And I feel like my relationship with my sister was strengthened because she was my biggest support during that time. And my relationship with my parents has got a lot stronger because we're more open with each other. And like I'm seen as more of like an adult. I'm seen as obviously I'll always be seen as a child, but I'm also seen as like the person I am now. And I think that was something that like I hadn't been able to do before, but we've got that now. And I'm slowly learning to be like more physically affectionate as a person, which is really difficult because you don't grow up seeing that in our sort of households. So it's really weird to me seeing myself become that person, and it freaks me out a little bit, but I'm just like, is this supposed to be normal? And so that's sort of like a positive change, being able to see like I'm capable of doing that.
Little devil, if you have anything to share.
Okay, so what was the question again?
So the question was like, after leaving your family, leaving religion, how do you navigate creating relationships with other people, be that through friendships, romantic relationships, work relationships? How do you manage that?
Well, it's honestly been difficult because I feel like with the way I was sheltered so much, and the only relationships I really had were my family. Friendships, even though I had some, I wasn't very close to with time. Like all my friendships kind of just drifted apart, and I feel like I became distant from everyone. And even then, all my friends at the time used to just be Muslims, so it was always people I could relate to, people from my own background. So I've never really had a friend outside of my culture, outside of my background, who spoke different languages or anything like that. So it's been hard to really like connecting with people. I feel like for me, I still need someone who I can relate to, who I can understand. And when that's missing, it's kind of hard to really connect with anybody. So I've had a lot of like associates, I guess. I had a lot of people who I wouldn't say they're my friends, but just people I can really like talk to and just like get along with. But I really don't think I have a really like deep, a meaningful friendship yet since I've left. I don't really have really strong connection with anybody like that. Romantic relationships haven't really happened yet. I haven't, and it's another thing is like I'm very scared after what's happened. Like I'm really scared to really get close to anybody. And like especially like the opposite gender. Like even though like I know like part of me is still kind of feels like that Muslim identity where like you're supposed to stay away from men, don't talk to them, you're not supposed to like nothing like that. So for me it's still like I need to like cross a boundary really just to like talk to other people regardless of their gender, their identity, anything like that. So for me I really have to like struggle to like get out there and like be more confident, make connections. With my own family. Hello?
You've made a big step from like knowing anybody outside of your family to making friends, but with complete strangers. So you've taken a big step, and I think that you shouldn't see any of this as a negative. This is all progress. Sorry, I feel like the thing is coming out. This is not a negative. You'll get there.
It takes time, like, and you'll do it within your own time, which is we've got that.
Yeah. And I was just gonna end it off with like with my family though, like things I haven't spoken to them for like a year since I left, right? Like we already had any contact. I wasn't like talking to them. I didn't send them any messages. Nothing. So they didn't really know what was going on with me for a long time. And only recently, like the last Eid, I think, really we started talking again. We started like slowly, not really like fully there. Like I haven't really I don't know. I haven't really like gone out there and like fully trust them, but like a part of me feels like comfortable again. A part of me feels like they have learned a lot since I left. They realize, me being gone like for so long, like it made them, and not knowing what happened to me, like it really made them realize like how much they actually cared about me. And how much they feared for the worst when I was gone, and they don't want to lose me again. They don't want me to they don't want something bad to happen to me. And this is my mom and my siblings, by the way, though, so not like the whole family. And for them, like they experienced the most pain when I left, so that's why they feel like, they want to rebuild that relationship with me, and I want to too, but it's a slow process. It's not fully there yet, but it's getting there, and I think hopefully with time it might improve.
All right. Eve, do you have anything to add?
Sorry. I think for me, it wasn't really about relationships because I think gradually throughout my high school and stuff like that, I've always wanted to have conversations with people or talk with people. Despite Islam, I've never really hated people or just really, you know. I think the difference I've noticed for me will have to be hysteria. There's a lot of hysteria on, jinn and stuff like that. And it really used to piss me off, even though I never really used to believe it. I used to hate it. It used to be like one day God is really going to be pissed at me and he's going to send like jinn after me. And after a while, I was just like, oh my God, this is so.
Can you,
This is
because
so
most of the audience here is not from a Muslim background, you may need to explain
it down for me.
what jinn is.
Yeah.
So, what is jinn?
Oh my God. Jinn is just being. I'll just describe it as the boogeyman. I think that's good enough.
Mm. They're like spirits.
Yeah, I don't know how
Put it
else to describe it.
okay. Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah.
They can
Or maybe
you and
like
Stories, basically, all that sort of jazz.
But anyway, continue.
yeah, I think that, and I think the other thing is I was always afraid of hell, or like I'm gonna go to hell or things like that, or for even the minus detail of things in the past. But then after a while, I was like, okay, after I lost, faith in everything, I became more relaxed with that because it always used to scare me. I was like, if I have a good time, or I do something that I'm not supposed to be doing, like for example, music, I listen to music a lot, and every time I could always hear myself or somebody else go like, oh, but this wrong? Like, isn't this bad? Things like that. And I still sometimes have that guilt, but I'm working towards it. I think for me, it's just that for the most part.
Someone has asked, jinn are like evil.
That's what made me laugh.
Jinn are genies. That's where the word genies come from. All right. I think we should talk a little bit more about some positives before we wrap things up. I wanted to know briefly, because it's been just about 2 years for me since I've left my family completely. And the one thing that I can say is that I regret nothing about it. I don't know if you all feel the same way. Like I think if I was put in the same position again, I would have made all of the decisions that I made. Because I would not trade, and this isn't something that I realized back then, but with the power of hindsight, I really, really do value my own freedom, and I don't know if you feel the same way. So Saff, and then we'll go around.
I don't regret what I've done. I would have just done things slightly differently. Ideally, I would have liked to have had this conversation once I'd graduated and things were a lot more secure. But I don't regret, like, the way it happened was not great. Like, I was essentially outed. But I don't regret it happening now, knowing where I am, like what I've achieved for myself individually, and how my relationship with my immediate family, like my parents, has gotten so much stronger in different ways and has got closer. I like that there is no regrets there. And I've met so many great people along the way. I've met you guys, so many others. Despite like losing certain friendships, I've gained a lot of new ones, and I can fully be myself.
arguably, I've made stronger friendships than I had
Yeah.
before. I feel like a lot of the friendships I had before were very, very superficial. But yeah, Little Devil, do you have any comments on? Do you regret leaving Islam? Would you have done
Mm.
it if you had another?
Honestly, like I wish I could have just stayed like the crowd, like how they say ignorance is bliss. I kind of wish I didn't know so much, but at the same time, I'm glad I did because I wouldn't have the life I do now if I hadn't realized the truth early on. And if I hadn't, and I'm glad it happened at an age like I would think I did it so late, but there's so many people who don't find out until like the late 30s, their 40s, and and they spend all this life practicing a religion for nothing, you know, then restricting themselves all their lives for nothing. And I don't have to do that anymore. I can actually live my life. I can actually do what I want and not feel like I'm gonna go to hell for this and that, like for little things. And I don't have to like I can, make friendships based on true like values instead of things like, oh, are they Muslim, are they religious, are they are they going to help me improve my iman, like those type of things that I was always taught, like that's what you have to look for in a friend. Like I don't have to look for that anymore. I can just look for actual good values in a person. I don't have to care if they're homosexual or not. I don't care. I have to care what religion they follow. Like nothing matters anymore. All this stuff is just stupid stuff like we put on ourselves to limit ourselves, and I don't have to limit myself anymore. But what I do feel like I would have done different is like I wouldn't have done it the way I did. But when I think about my circumstances, I feel like I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
At that time, I didn't have a bank account, so I could have set up a GoFundMe. I didn't have any kind of support from my family or any friends who could help me escape. I didn't have anything, and the resources I called to help me, like I said, they denied me help. So really, what position was I in? I had no other really way out, and I guess things just had to go this way, and I had to experience what I did just to learn and grow from it and realize how the world can really be. And I always tell myself I'm a survivor, and the freedom I got is like it's the price you have to pay for some things. For some people, things just don't come that easily, and for me, like all that I had to go through, that was the price I had to pay for my freedom, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
It would be. This might be a controversial statement, but it would be a very boring world for you and me if it was so easy to just get our freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we would be, or at least I don't think that I would be as interesting a person without all of the struggles that I've. And maybe that's just me and my mental health showing. I don't. But that's genuinely how I feel. And I think that everyone here can agree that we're just waiting for the day where you come out with a public Instagram and you can just behave like that.
I wish. I wish, but I'm already getting so many stalkers, even people like who don't even know what I look like. So it's like I'm really rethinking that, but hopefully one day.
Hopefully one day. Eve, what are the things? Do you regret being an ex-Muslim? Do you regret leaving Islam? Is there anything you would have done differently?
I think for me it will have been the circumstances. Of which I did come out. It's kind of weird. I came out and I was rushed back into the closet, so that's just kind of weird. But I think the circumstances which I will have come out, like I will have been financially stable, I will wait like one more year or two, get my diploma and everything, and then get a job, move far away, then come out or do as I please without telling anybody. But I think for me, I think I've developed this thing basically where I just realized that most of my family are not even family, or more like all in most cases. And there's nothing holding me back. I think emotionally, I've let go of my family a long time ago. So no, I think it was worth it.
Great. We might invite John back in because I think there's some questions from the live chat.
Hello.
Hi.
So, my apologies to you ladies for such a light audience that we had, but there will be people that will see this when it posts as a video. There was a couple questions from the audience, and I had a couple myself. way back at the beginning, Jake 4D had asked, does the panel feel like the hijab has been used to hide physical abuse, and to what degree, if you think that's the case? And I think he's just speaking more of the niqab, because the hijab doesn't necessarily cover the face.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, technically, you're not allowed to hit anybody. You're allowed to hit people, but you're not allowed to hit their face. So,
oh, okay. So the hijab could be hiding damage, like where they got smacked in the head or something like that, huh? But yeah, he's wondering if those if those types of things are partially used to cover up the fact that the woman was abused.
Can I mention something?
Yeah.
So what I find really funny is that, like, according to like a lot of Islamic jurisdiction, is that you're not supposed to hit a woman to the point where she's bruised or any of her bones are broken. And I just find this such a interesting way to hide abuse, because you can still be hitting and beating someone without bruising them, you know, and hiding the evidence. You can still be putting them through a lot of hell without having any kind of physical, like, you know, sign of it.
The degree to which somebody is very subjective, because some people bruise really easily, whereas, like, for me, for example, I don't bruise. So it's just very, very subjective. But the other thing I wanted to say is that I think there's always a discrepancy in what constitutes a hijab, and that's because a lot of people wear it in a lot of different ways. But the classical sort of interpretation of hijab is that it covers the whole body except the face and the hands. So while the standardized sort of definition of hijab is the head covering, it is a full body covering. So most Muslim women will have long sleeves, will have full length trousers, and there is the potential there to hide violence.
Eve, did you want to comment on that question? You're muted in case you. All right, we'll go to Saff, and then hopefully Eve will be able to weigh in after that. Saff, what do you have something to add to that?
Not really. I think, I don't know, I guess if you're already wearing the hijab, it depends, I guess, when the abuse comes. It could always come after they're wearing it, and then if you're already forced into wearing it, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's not really convenient because you're already told you have to wear it.
Right. Well, and the other thing I want to point out is that there's many more types of abuse than physical abuse that women can be subjected to in the Muslim world. One more shot, Eve. Do you want to say anything about this question? She may be having internet issues again. All right, I have a couple questions, but first, here's a couple comments I highlighted from the chat that I. Oh, there you are, Eve. Go ahead. Did you hear the question I asked, Eve?
No, sorry. I was petting my cat and I didn't pay attention.
Oh, no, that's okay. Jake 4D had asked, does the panel feel like the hijab has been used to hide physical abuse?
Oh,
like
I had that question. I thought it was another one you asked just now.
Oh, no. Yeah. Go, did you have a comment on that question?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think for me, I went through that. I had an experience where I was assaulted, and then I was wearing the hijab, and nobody asked me to, show my scars or anything. So yeah, it's definitely used like that.
And then, like I said, I have a couple questions, but just a couple comments from the live chat I thought were interesting. When you were talking about the abuse issue, the Rage had posted, "This is fundamentalism with power and the results of it." And then he said about the panel, "Each of them are braver than me." And then you already got his question about the evil genies. And then on the subject of the jinn, Doorknob had posted, the Western world got the I Dream of Genie version of jinns. most have no idea of the Islamic version of genies. And of course, all of you lovely ladies are so young, you probably don't even know what I Dream of Jeannie is, but that was a sitcom back in the 60s about a genie. And then the couple of questions I had, and this really doesn't necessarily relate to you being a female atheist. I'm getting some feedback there. But I just wondered, because I've heard other atheists have these problems. After becoming an atheist, did anybody on the panel have any problems with dealing with the idea of mortality? You know, because when you believed in God, you were of the apprehension that you'd get to live for, after you die. Was that a problem for any of you when you became atheist and realizing that there was no eternal life?
Honestly, it put my mind at ease. Yeah, I wasn't going to be burning in hell forever. So
Sad.
That was my main concern.
Yeah.
No, I didn't really have any of that sort of strong opinions on it. It was the only thing in terms of mortality that used to terrify me was the month of Muharram, when they were like, that was the potential 2 days that the world could end. So that was the only sort of terrifying thing, because I lacked just a general, the first thing to go for me was a belief in God, not necessarily Islam itself. So because I didn't really feel that, the idea of heaven and hell didn't really affect me more so than anything. So when people tell me to go to hell, it doesn't really, it evokes nothing. I don't feel it. Yeah.
Well, no, and I never even thought of that. It's such an idle, shallow threat when, if theists are trolling you and they'd say, well, you're going to hell, like, oh, really? I don't believe there's a hell, kind of like somewhat like the interaction that Faye had with the woman about asking if she believed in Christ. Little Devil, did you have any problems dealing with knowing that you're mortal now and there will be no eternal life?
Well, to be honest, the only thing that was even holding me back from officially losing faith was the fear of hell. And when I finally let go of that fear, it was really liberating, I think. And for me, the first time someone passed away after my apostasy was actually my uncle. And he died of cancer, and I was not too close to him, but he was someone that I really knew, and everyone knew in the family. We always seen him around. So, and he was in a lot of pain. So seeing that, he's finally put out of his pain, he's no longer suffering anymore, and wherever he ends up now, there is no heaven or hell. He's gonna be in eternal peace now. That's how I kind of saw it, and God gave me a lot of closure, and made me feel better about my own mortality too, because I know that once I'm gone, that's it. There's gonna be nothing else afterwards, and it helps with the grieving process for everything now. Whenever something dies, I just remember that this is it. They're no longer in pain. They're no longer going to feel anything. I mean, one part of it that is sad, that you might not see that person again. That person, is gone, so there's no way of reconnecting with them in heaven. But we don't know that. We don't know much about what happens after we die. As long as there's no torture, I feel like that's enough to give me ease and know that whatever happens after death, it's okay.
And Eve, your answer to that question?
For me, I think the thing that I struggle with the most with my mortality is when I do grow old. The anticipation that my end is near. I think that will be scary for me, and it still is. But other than that, I have no problem with going extinct on my own.
Well, and I have some problems with dying myself. I'm not an ex-Muslim, but my sister has always said to me, why worry about dying? What was it like before you were born? She says to me. Well, I don't know. I wasn't born yet. Well, that's what it's going to be like after you die. So what's there to be afraid of? And then the other question was, do any of you ladies have any problem with dealing with you do something that when you were a Muslim was frowned upon? You know, do you worry about if you do something that's considered haram? You know, do you still have any feelings of guilt or feelings of there might be repercussions from, you know, doing something that you're not supposed to as a Muslim?
Not as much. Not as much. I think once you leave Islam, it really is just a clear cut, okay, that's no longer what I associate myself with anymore. Like, I think people make a big deal out of, well, taking off the hijab is a big thing, in my opinion. But, like, eating pork and drinking alcohol, I think some people, like, especially non-Muslim people, will approach me and be like, oh, so have you drank alcohol? Like, I didn't know it existed. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels silly, and it really wasn't that big a deal for me to take like that first sip or like eat bacon, and I really don't get what the obsession with bacon is. But you know, stuff like that, I don't really feel guilt. Sometimes I do feel like I have a split personality because there's just one voice that's just very loud from time to time that's like, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, you would have never done that 7 years ago. But most of my personality has overridden that anyway.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and from what I know of you, there's a lot of things you do that you probably wouldn't do 7 years ago. So.
Yeah.
And then before you comment, Saff, I just wanted to read this lovely post that Doorknob had left. He says, ex-Muslim atheist women are among the people in the world I most respect. So amazing and inspiring. Top shelf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And go ahead, Saff. What is your comment on that question?
So before I like left Islam and knew I was leaving it and all of that stuff, I did a lot of that stuff beforehand because I was essentially living a double life. So afterwards, there was like a period. That's the only time I really felt guilt, because it was like, I probably shouldn't have been doing this, but then I've been doing it before then. So that kind of went, but it was more so like forming romantic relationships and stuff like that. That took a long time, like, and still is sort of working through that now. Mostly because I am generally quite a shy person and I'm quite introverted, and I have sort of like, I'm like concerns of like image and like the way my body looks and stuff like that. So that makes me feel nervous anyway. So the trying to like forge that with somebody else, yeah, that takes a while to get over. But I don't feel guilty anymore. But that was the one thing I did feel more guilty about anything. But yeah, it's like Faye said, like drinking alcohol, all that sort of stuff seems quite trivial when someone says it's like, oh my God, you've done this. I'm like, most Muslims do it anyway, and then they stop.
Dime, but every time someone's asked me, have you had a bacon sandwich? I was a fucking millionaire. Like,
the only thing is, I will eat chicken when I go out, and it doesn't matter if it's halal or not. Preferably, you know, it's great if it is, but like I don't really eat meat anyway.
From an Islamic context, that's probably worse because you could have had a halal alternative and you didn't. So it you know, like eating pork is not a big deal, guys. Stop asking us if we've had pig. Like, it's not a big deal.
The idea of pork anyway, I don't like, because it's so conditioned as a child, like how disgusting it is and like how you shouldn't touch it. I don't want to eat it anyway, and it doesn't even look nice. And most of like my non-Muslim friends who have grown up like trying pork and stuff don't even like it themselves. So
You're blaspheming to the atheist community right now. Like they can
but there is.
Oh, that reminds me, everybody. September 30th is Blasphemy Day. Faye is going to do a very special stream or video. Have a video. Is it a video or stream?
It's a video.
It'll be a video that'll be premiering, and we will get everybody's information in the video description. But I highly recommend you go over and sub to Faye's channel and any of these ladies' channels if they have them. So, Little Devil, what is your answer or commentary on that question?
For me, like coming from a place of how I was religious, like there was a lot of things I didn't do. Like I was just so restricted in so many ways to the point like even listening to music I felt like was the ultimate sin. Like I couldn't do that. So coming from a place like that and to now like just listening to music freely and not wearing hijab, even like to the point when I was wearing a t-shirt for the first time, like having my arms exposed, it made me feel so naked. So things like that, like I've had a lot of stuff that was restricted from me, so even like the smallest things can be like really hard for me to do, but like I feel like I've come a long way and I don't really feel a lot of guilt anymore. But sometimes I do think in my head, like, what if my family saw me like this, like what would they think of me? That's the kind of the only thing that really like bother me, like what I think of them and how they think of me. But otherwise, like there's no like fear like, oh, God's gonna punish me for this and I'm gonna go to hell. Like I don't care about that. That doesn't really bother me. It's just mostly like what will other people think of me, that kind of bothers me sometimes. And not just other people, my own family, the only people who I actually care about, that I would feel like their opinion matters to me. But yeah, other than that, it hasn't really been an issue. And the same thing as like Saff said, like I still don't like, I don't touch pork too, just because of that whole like internalized disgust we have like of it. We've just been told all our lives that it's something gross, so like I still can't get myself to even like go near it. But like other than that, it's like I haven't had any issue like doing whatever I wanted.
Yeah, and it's like we weren't even allowed to at a point say the word pig. We had to say pig.
Yes. Yes, oh my gosh, just that even saying it is like just so horrible.
Yeah.
Like they kind of got over it now, sort of like my friends and like my family, but like my sister was quite little. She used to like Peppa Pig, and she said Peppa Pig. My parents were fine with that, but like other family members would be like, "Oh my god, you should be watching Peppa Pig." But now, what am I
everywhere?
All right,
like,
Eve, what is your answer to that question?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yep.
We're just patiently waiting.
Am I whispering again? Oh
No.
sorry. Okay. For me, I guess it's just the same thing. Pretty much. Like you guys have pretty much covered it all. I mean, I share the same sentiments. I don't see any reason for repeating it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's hard batting clean. It's hard batting clean up.
Yeah, it's hard to have a
Yeah.
when you're like
To be
7
the last one. So, real quick, before we start closing out here, I just want to recognize some folks in the audience that came by to watch us. Jake Fordy's in the house, Doorknob Head, thank you for coming. And one of my favorite atheist women, the Sassy Heathen, is in the house. I know there's some other people. Where the heck are they? Yeah, Leah Philia stopped by. Oh, there's me, John. There was this cat named John Peterson in the live chat too. I'm not sure about him. And of course, the Rage was here. Philosophish, Leslie Hayes. Thank everybody for coming. Sorry if I missed anybody. We appreciate all of you. And let's just go around the room now and see if anybody has any final thoughts. And we'll start with Eve. Give us your final thoughts about today and anything else that you would like the audience to know about you.
I really enjoyed being in the panel with all of you guys. I think it's really nice from time to time to see people who are like-minded. I mean, obviously you kind of see each other on Twitter and stuff like that, but it's different when, you hear each other's voice and things like that. It feels more intimate, and I really liked it. Another thing I'd like to mention, maybe this is just to deflect from the issue at the moment, is that I hope everybody stays home and stays safe and take care of yourselves.
And please hang out here until we close out, Eve. I can't remember. I think I don't know, sometimes the guests take off and we always like to talk a couple minutes after the stream, say goodbye to each other. Little Devil, what are your final thoughts? And please tell the audience anything you'd like them to know. You're muted, LD.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay. My final thoughts are I also really enjoyed the panel. It was really nice to meet Eve for the first time. I already met Saff and Faye and also you. So it was really nice. I really enjoyed the topics we discussed. I think these type of discussions need to be had more often, and it's good to have it amongst other ex-Muslim women who also can, empathize with what you went through and also experience something similar. So it's good to like have our voices heard. And I think I even spoke to Faye about this earlier, how experiences like ours are the ones that need to be heard more. Like we need to have our voices amplified more, because there might be some people out there who are closeted and going through something similar and they don't know who they can relate to. So it's voices like ours that need to be heard more so that those people know that they're not alone. And I think this is a really good opportunity for that. And yeah, that's it.
That's beautiful. I ain't ashamed to admit it. I'm getting a little emotional hearing you say that, because that's the very reason why I, asked Faye, to do that show, do our show on Sundays. And I just was so flabbergasted when I met Faye and other ex-Muslims about the persecution that they go through in some Muslim countries. And it just, it blew me away that, like I've said often on this program or on this channel, westernized atheists can talk about, how they're treated by, Christians and Muslims, but it's nothing compared to what apostates and atheists go through in many Muslim countries around the world. So very beautiful words. Saff.com. Give us your final thoughts and anything people should know about you.
Yeah, just how like everyone was saying, like it was really nice to just get together, and it was like I can talk about like these issues with, again, other women I can relate to. I can't really talk about these issues with my friends that I've had for a while because nobody sort of gets it in this way. And it was really nice to meet Eve and now make a new friend. And it's just been a nice evening. Yeah, we talked about some heavy stuff, but we had some fun too. And it's just nice to be able to, like, because I lost some of my closest friends that were Muslim, that was still part of my life, and it's difficult to relate that with the friends I have now. So to be able to like have that with you guys is very nice.
Awesome. And now to my co-hostess with the mostest, Faye, the most gracious.
So a couple of things. We've had Saff on the Apostate Alliance. We've had Eve on the Apostate Alliance. We need to have Little Devil on the Apostate Alliance.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. I want to pull the calendar out and see if I can get her to commit to a date.
That's the first thing. The second thing is that just kind of going off what you were saying, John, I don't think I give you enough credit for allowing me and mine to have this platform, because I've spoken about this a lot, and it really, really bothers me how limited our voices are and restricted to the ex-Muslim community, and it's not really blasted to a wider community where we get to share these experiences with Western atheists or even really Christians. Like the ex-Muslim experience is kind of just really, really isolated to ex-Muslims. And when John first interviewed me, he looked into my whole background. Like, this man had dug up things that I didn't even know existed anymore. He had gone into like all of my old poetry work, all of my old, like I'd done an interview for a book that I published maybe in like 2016 or something like that. It was quite mind-blowing how much research John had done on me before he had interviewed me, and then had extended this offer for me to allow you guys and others to have this platform to share our stories to a much larger audience and to a much more diverse audience than just ex-Muslims. And I think that we do have these hang-ups within our community where we'll just sort of share our grievances with ex-Muslims and just kind of leave it there, when really everyone should know that this is a thing that's happening. Everyone should know that, you know, people are being killed for what they believe. People are being abused for what they believe. People are being ostracized, exiled, disowned, beaten, tortured, you know, financially abused, spoken against for what they believe. This is something that the world should know, and this is something that we should come together to resolve. And I'm hoping that as time goes on, we will be able to make this a bigger platform and allow even more people to take part in this. And for me, it's never been about how many clicks we get or what faces are the most known. Two of the first people that I reached out to was Saff, because it's always a good time talking to Saff, but also she's a close friend of mine, and she has a very, very different story to mine. And the second person that I reached out to is Little Devil, who has a very, very similar story to mine. But I feel as though she needs a platform, you know, because it's a story that is tragic and is not spoken about enough. So I'm really, really happy that I've had this sort of plethora of stories and experiences to share. And I really deeply appreciate both you and Ronnie / Knock. I'm not used to the names yet. But I'm really, really appreciative of the platform that you've given us.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything else coming up that besides Apostasy Day that people should know about?
It's not
besides Sunday at the Apostate Alliance, but go ahead.
It is Blasphemy Day is coming up. I am actually so last year what I did for Blasphemy Day, and Saff can actually talk about what happened on Blasphemy Day for her as well, because she has a very interesting story. But last year for Blasphemy Day, I drew the Prophet Muhammad, and it was kind of a hit on Twitter. I got suspended.
I can't believe that's been a year already.
Your image was very like it. That's what he could have looked like realistically, and it was very well. It was not like the one that sort of take the piss.
It was an accurate depiction based on what was said about him in his own narrations. This year, I'm doing something a little bit different, and I don't know how it's going to be received, and I'm hoping for a very big reception. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but that will be on the 30th of September. The video is already posted, but it's going to premiere on the 30th. So, you know, save your dates, mark your calendars. That's when it's coming out. It's like a 5-minute video, but I think it will. Last year's one was like 30 minutes long, but this one's a quick one.
I think I know what's going on just from the thing you already tweeted about it coming up. It's like,
what do you mean?
Yeah, it should be a good one. What?
I'm happy for people to guess. I can make a poll. Yeah. Already knows. Saff, you also with Blasphemy Day, there was something you wanted to share as well.
Yeah. So I didn't realize this until I was reflecting on like what happened on Blasphemy Day last year, but Blasphemy Day last year was actually the day I publicly came out as ex-Muslim. So like I did the little video for ex-Muslims of North America's Awesome Without Allah campaign. So it's like I did Blasphemy Day as much as you could do it. I announced my apostasy to the world, and that was sort of like a big change. That was like when the Sinning Skeptics happened, so it was a lot. And then like for this year, I've written a blog post which will go out on the 30th, reflecting on my experience with sort of Blasphemy Day, talking about like sort of the blasphemy cases we've had over the last couple of months, because a lot of them, there's a fair few that have happened, a lot in Pakistan and a lot in Nigeria. There was one recently where like a 13-year-old boy has been arrested. I think it was today. So reflecting on those, and then looking like how we've sort of achieved, like had achievements, because it's always to look at positives. So looking at what's happened in Sudan with their repealing of like the apostasy laws, how that's like a move forward, and talking about apostasy day, like we have a day now. So yeah, that'll be going up on my website, which is the Amber Journals. It's in my Twitter.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were petering out there. I was gonna. No, I was just gonna say I can't believe it's been a year since Faye drew Muhammad, and
Yeah.
Like hearing this, I can't believe like a year ago, Saff, like I didn't know who you were.
well,
Yeah, a year ago, it feels like I've known you for way longer because I don't know, like.
And the thing is too is just to give you fair warning, I'm in my mid-50s. The older you get, the faster it goes. It just keeps speeding up until, like, my stepfather, who's 85, told me one time recently that weeks are like days to him now. It's going so fast.
Yeah, it scares me because my little sister will be applying for university this year, so she's going to be turning 18 next year, and I'm just like, oh my god, I feel old now. And then
something like, oh, it's been 6 years since Destiny's Child or some shit. This is what it feels like.
So I want to thank everybody for being here today in the audience, and I want to especially thank the panel, Eve, Little Devil, Saff, Faye, I love you. And just to wrap up what we were talking about here, see, one of the big reasons why we need to get this out there, this information about what happens to not just women, but anybody that wants to leave religion behind in Muslim countries. These horrible things that can happen if they're found out to be atheist, or even people are found to be gay. They can be killed. Some countries by the government, in all the countries by radicals who will kill them. And the reason it's important to get this information out, like Faye said, I could give a fuck about clicks, but there are so many good people out there in the world that if they knew about this, they would spread the word. They would reach out and help out, and it's just that they don't know about it. I mean, the world is filled with good-hearted people, and like when these ladies and their other friends talk about Muslims, they're not really talking about Muslims. They're talking about the idea of Islam. They're not saying that all Muslims are bad. They're saying some Muslims have some ideas that are really bad. And that's the same thing with us ex-Christians. I have Christian friends. I have Christian family members. I would never say that all Christians are, bad or evil or anything like that. And none of these ex-Muslims are saying that about Muslims either. But so I'm going to say something right now. I think Rage would not have a problem with me saying this. If you're a content creator, please feel free to mirror the stream. It'd probably be a good idea if you email Nakasuchi and let them know you're going to do it. But the stuff that they shared here today is very important. We want as many people to see it as possible. So please feel free to mirror this stream if you are a content creator. And on that issue of mirroring, me and Doc were talking about it the other day about how to get this out. So we're going to, in the near future, we're going to be reaching out to some larger content creators and see if they will mirror like the episodes of the Apostate Alliance and this, episode of the Women Roundtable. So because like it is, and I know Ronnie would agree with this, the most important thing about like this stream and the Apostate Alliance streams that we do that include ex-Muslims is the most important thing is to get that information into as many heads as we possibly can. Because like I said, there's a lot of beautiful people in the world that once they know, they're going to reach out and help. So
I was going to add, even if you don't mirror the whole thing, even just sharing it or like cutting up clips, posting them on Facebook, Twitter, it's as effective. And as long as people are interested and they are made aware of what's going on, I think it will really pull at some heartstrings and raise awareness. And that's ultimately all we're asking for. I think that's the mode to change that we need. It's not necessarily driven by money. It's not necessarily driven by, gunpoint. It's driven by raising awareness and making people aware of the fact that these things are still going on, not just in Eastern countries, in Western countries. 3 out of 4 of us here are in the West. Little Devil's in the US, me and Saff are in the UK.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and people need to know what it is.
Well, and that's not to say that bad things don't happen in westernized countries, because there's actually where they will, maybe tell a child that they're going on a trip to visit some family members and then do female genital mutilation on them, and they in secret in Western countries, will marry off young children and stuff. So it happens in the Western countries too, as Faye pointed out, but it's really really horrible in the Muslim countries. It seemed like there was something else that you said that reminded me to mention something else, but I guess we're going to get out of here. Once the old man's brain starts going, then we gotta end it. It's horrible being a boomer, let me tell you. All right, so I want to thank everybody for being here. Remember, watch the Apostate Alliance at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. every Sunday. Don't miss Faye's Blasphemy Day premiere. That will be awful fun. And again, on this channel, on The Rage, Wednesday nights are now open room night. Come and join us and bring a topic, and we'll talk about everything under the sun. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And remember, be the conversation.